Ever wish you could like travel back in time, get a peek at how people lived centuries ago, what they thought, what they believed?
Oh, absolutely.
Well, today on our deep dive,
Yeah.
we're doing just that. We're diving into, get this, the Book of Knowledge.
Okay.
It's this super cool guide published way back in 1806.
Wow.
That's a wild mix of astrology, health advice, even palmistry.
It's amazing how people look to the stars for guidance on just about everything back then.
Right, like from their health to how good their crops would be.
It's true, yeah.
And to help us break it all down, we have our expert who can decode old texts. I swear it's like a superpower.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
It is fascinating to see how those belief systems changed over time.
Right.
I mean, just think about 1806.
Okay, yeah.
New York City, bustling hub on the edge of huge changes. And this book, with its mix of ancient wisdom and really practical advice, it probably appealed to a pretty diverse group of people.
Totally. Like they're navigating a world that's changing so fast.
Exactly, yeah.
Okay, so full disclosure, the actual title is The Book of Knowledge, Treating of the Wisdom of the Ancients in 4 parts.
Wow, that's a mouthful.
Right. But don't worry, we're sticking to the first 2 parts today, the ones all about how the cosmos impacts our lives
Okay.
and how to stay healthy, 1806 style.
I like it, like a crash course in self-help, but with a cosmic twist.
Exactly. So put yourself in 1806 for a sec. You find this book. What do you do with it? How are you using it?
Well, imagine yourself starting each year by, consulting the book to figure out what's in store based on what day New Year's Day falls on.
Oh, so like a year-long horoscope?
Pretty much. So say New Year's Day lands on a Sunday, say.
Okay, Sunday.
You're promised a mild winter, a plentiful harvest, your livestock are thriving.
That sounds pretty nice.
Right. But, if it's a Monday, New Year's Day?
Uh-oh. What happens?
Harsh winter, summer filled with disease, and just widespread scarcity. Not great.
Yikes. Talk about starting the year off on a bad note. But this book goes way beyond just yearly predictions, right? Like it gets into the real nitty-gritty of astrology.
Absolutely. Yeah, it does a deep dive on each zodiac sign.
Okay, fun.
Giving these vivid descriptions, like take Aries, the fire sign.
Yeah, fire sign.
Described as hot and dry, which they thought meant a quick temper and maybe a tendency to overspend.
Interesting. Makes you think about those like fiery personalities.
Right. And then you got Taurus, an earth sign.
Okay.
Cold and dry, much more grounded, maybe even a little stubborn.
So even back then, they had those personality types figured out.
They had ideas, for sure.
But they didn't stop there. This book connects these signs to physical health, too, right?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. And this is where it gets really interesting. They delve into something called planetary hours.
Planetary hours.
Yeah.
Okay, I have no idea what that means.
So picture this. Each hour of the day is assigned to a specific planet.
Oh, interesting.
And these planets, they influence your health and even your personality.
Okay, so each hour of the day had like its own planetary vibe.
You got it.
You got it.
So the hour of Venus, all about love and beauty, that was supposed to be extra powerful at night.
Because it's not competing with the sun.
Exactly. A moonlit rendezvous in 1806, supercharged.
Right. She loved it. But it wasn't just about romance, was it? This whole planetary influence thing, the book connects that to the body too, right? Like different planets affecting different parts of the body, even causing specific ailments.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so give me an example. Which planet was giving people the most trouble back then?
Well, let's take Saturn, for instance. I mean, even today we associate Saturn with melancholy, restrictions.
Yeah, it's a bit of a downer.
Exactly. And back then, they thought it ruled the bladder and the spleen.
Interesting.
Yeah, and the Book of Knowledge links Saturn to things like jaundice, rheumatism, even coughs.
I can actually see that. Like Saturn's energy, it's kind of heavy, right? Sluggish. Like it could bring you down, maybe cause some health problems.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay, but it wasn't just Saturn, right? Each planet had its own zone in the body and its own list of ailments. But they didn't just leave you to suffer under a planet's influence, did they? What kind of remedies did they have back then?
Okay, so get this. One of their go-to treatments, bloodletting.
Bloodletting.
You're kidding.
Nope, for all sorts of things. Fevers, headaches, basically anything that seemed like, too much of something in the body.
Too much blood, probably. I'll stick with my modern medicine, thank you very much. Did they have anything a little less, intense?
Well, they did love their cinnamon oil.
Cinnamon oil, okay, I can get behind that.
The book raves about it. Colds, coughs, any kind of digestive issue, you name it. They even called it natural balm, like it was magical or something.
See, they were onto something there.
Yeah.
I always have some cinnamon oil in my pantry. What else? What else do they use? Let's see. Oh, rosemary oil was big for memory problems and if you couldn't hear so well.
Really?
And for toothaches, they swore by aquavitae.
Aquavitae, what is that exactly?
It's a strong distilled spirit,
Oh, so like the 1806 version of whiskey as medicine? Makes sense.
basically. But you know, it's interesting. So many of these remedies, they relied on plants, natural ingredients. Speaks to a whole different relationship with nature, I think.
I agree. So it wasn't all about astrology and, hoping the planets would align in your favor. They took a very practical approach too, right? Like with managing livestock and making sure their land was productive. They really understood water management, didn't they?
Oh, yeah. The book on knowledge gets into some surprisingly detailed stuff about their pastures. They were digging ditches to direct the water flow, making sure their grazing land was, like, perfectly moist for their animals.
It sounds like they had a system. It wasn't just throwing some seeds around and hoping for the best. They were really in tune with nature, working with it to, like, help things thrive.
Exactly. And super resourceful. I mean, there's this one tip where they suggest using, get this, woolen rags, shavings from horns, and soap ashes, all to enrich the soil.
Wow.
Recycling centuries before it was cool.
Right. So this whole idea that sustainability is a new thing, not so much, right? They understood that everything's connected and you can't just take from the land.
It's all about balance, giving back.
Exactly. And this focus on like the practical stuff, it wasn't just about farming either. Like the Book of Knowledge also have all this advice about how to protect your crops from pests and animals, often with these really clever methods using natural ingredients.
Okay, like what? Give me an example.
So they talk about creating a special mixture of herbs, and then they would scatter this around the fields to keep the critters away.
Like a 19th century version of organic pest control?
Exactly. I love it. These little glimpses into the past, they're just so fascinating. It makes you realize that while some things have changed drastically, others have stayed surprisingly consistent over time.
Yeah, and it's like we've been on this trip,
Mm.
uncovering these layers of like how they thought and what they did.
And you can't help but wonder, right? Like, what will people hundreds of years from now think about our wisdom? What will seem fascinating and what will they just shake their heads at?
Totally. Puts things in perspective for sure. So we've covered a lot of ground here. Cosmos, the human body, even 19th century farming tips.
Yeah.
What's the takeaway, what we learned from the Book of Knowledge?
This book, it's like this blend of all these different things. And it reminds us that knowledge. It never sits still. What they thought was groundbreaking back then might seem like, I don't know, folklore to us now. And what we take for granted, who knows what people will make of it centuries from now. It's true. Keeps you humble. So it's about staying curious, right? Always asking questions and never being afraid to dig a little deeper. But what about those 1806 folks? What can we learn from them?
Well, their world was changing fast, just like ours is now. And they were trying to figure out these big things, like health and fate and their place in it all. This book, it gives us this little glimpse into how they looked for answers, that desire to understand the world and how to make it work for them.
Yeah, and maybe, just maybe, there's some real wisdom tucked away in those pages, even if it's just rediscovering cinnamon oil or remembering that, hey, nature's pretty amazing and we got to take care of it.
I like that.
So to everyone listening, we'll leave you with this. If you could go back in time and grab just one piece of advice, one golden nugget from the Book of Knowledge to use today, what would it be? What really stuck with you from our deep dive? Let us know. And if this sparked your curiosity, go check out the Book of Knowledge. See what forgotten wisdom you can dig up. It's out there waiting to be rediscovered.